I think humanity is going to run into a vacuum of meaning, and we'll just like need to figure it out. By the end of 2025, we will have the first superhumans in the sense that across one objectively measurable test, we will have humans with an implant that does better than almost every human without an implant.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Founders in Arms podcast with me, Immad, Akhund, founder and CEO of Mercury.
And I'm Rajat Suri, co-founder of Lima and Tribe. And today we have with us Dilan Dane, a good friend of the pod, a good friend of Immad and I. Dilan is a serial founder. He's founded some interesting companies, recent companies in health. Dilan, want to tell us more about what you're up to these days?
Thank you for having me, guys. Well, right now I'm building a company in health and wellness space where we're launching hundreds of wellness brands by partnering with influencers. And the goal is to bring health, wellness, and longevity to 1 billion people worldwide by supporting all shapes and forms of people in different communities. And yeah, so that's what we do.
The company is called System 2.
System 2.
System 2.
It's a very nice.
And yeah. Previous to that, Dilan sold his company to Google. So lots of topics to talk about. I thought one interesting one would be to start with AI. System 2 is kind of an AI first company. I guess maybe talk a little bit, Dilan, about how you incorporate AI and, how you're kind of seeing AI applications of the technology evolving.
System 2 is an AI first company. So our premise with starting System 2 was that there are a multi-trillion-dollar services sector that is somewhat untouched through software. And these are services like doctors, lawyers, educators, and of course, coaches. Right. And System 2, what we wanted to do is can we expand coaching? Can we bring access to coaching by using AI to supercharge really good coaches, especially in wellness and health? Turns out we had this insight about 2.5-ish years ago, and AI, if anything, has moved even faster than we thought, and being able to do a really good job at coaching related tasks. And these are, today we work with things like fitness coaching, diet coaching, etc. But it's a whole host of things we're very excited about in the future. Looking at mental health and even kind of like coaching through people through clinical conditions and stuff like that. So it's very exciting.
So how do users work with System 2? Like, would they work with an AI coach, or would they work with a human coach who's also using AI to augment this?
We actually started out with a fully AI product where the idea was to build a hardware device that plugs into your TV and turns your living room into a workout studio / therapy studio type thing. And one of our key insights was that people don't like the content can be good, the coaching can be good, but people really want that emotional connection. They want to know that there's a human out there who cares about what they need to do, what they should do. And so there's a big learning for us, and now we exclusively focus on augmenting human coaches with AI. So the beautiful thing is that the human brings this story from their life, right? Like maybe they lost 100 pounds in weight, or like overcame depression or whatever that is. And they also bring accountability, right? Like, so if you don't go to the gym, if you don't stick to your diet plan or whatever that is, there's someone that would get on the phone and talk to you. That's amazing. Where the AI is useful is one in making the human more efficient, right? Being able to draft any messages that the human might want to send to the client, but also giving the human superpowers in being able to remember more and extract more context about each single user, right? So it's kind of hard. Think about, like, if you're coaching someone you'd have to go to your notes and really thoroughly study everything to know what rep and set that they did like months ago, for example, if they did something like a workout. And AI is instantly good at that. So it's just like it's a combination that makes everything so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dil, you're the perfect guy to be doing this. You're probably the most like health aware person I know. Both from like a
You can't
fitness
see it in the
perspective.
video, but Dylan's ripped. Don't take your shirt off, though, Dylan. We want to do that.
We're not taking
I'm
our
happy
shirts
to
off.
take my test.
We'd all be looking much worse than Dylan if we did that. But
It will embarrass us.
yeah, but Dylan is like super health aware. He actually like leads a bunch of us other founders to like how to improve our lifestyles, and become healthier people. And not only I think Dylan are you focused on like health and fitness, but also biohacking to some degree, right? Like this
Sure.
is you using supplements and things like that. Like
How many supplements do you take per day, Dylan?
Probably close to 30 or 40.
I read
30,
online
40.
that Brian Johnson is taking 40, so Dylan's matching that. What's the most experimental thing you take right now that's legal and you can talk about in the show? I have to go on proviso.
I am taking rapamycin, which is quite popular in longevity circles, but has become somewhat controversial recently, particularly because Brian Johnson recently stopped taking it. And so rapamycin is what do you call an mTOR inhibitor. Has a fascinating history to this compound that how it was discovered and stuff like that. But the bottom line is that mTOR is something in your cells that kind of like is critical to cellular growth and stuff like that. But as cells grow and divide, it sort of tends to also increase the sort of the error rate over time and leads to all kinds of negative side effects. And by inhibiting mTOR, you can reduce this negative kind of build up.
What's the controversy?
There is no human data on rapamycin working. However, rapamycin is the only molecule that has been proven to extend lifespan in every single organism it's been given to. I think from yeast.
Why didn't they do a
to
human trial then?
worms. Humans live a long time, so it's really hard to do. This is one of the primary challenges in longevity. It's really two reasons, right? Like it's hard to do a controlled experiment with humans. Like you have to give it to one cohort and control the other cohort. But then humans also live a long time, so yeah, it's really hard to see the impact.
This isn't something that you can give to like a 70-year-old and it's magically better. Like you have to do it at like the age of 40 or something and wait.
It's not that's actually not the case. You can give it to a 70-year-old, at least in mice. Even if you give it to elderly mice, they live longer. And I give it to both of my parents. So
And you're also taking like peptides. Is that not experimental?
it is also experimental. I currently take BPC 157 and TB 5000. It's BPC 157, especially body protection compound 157. It's a peptide that helps healing across the body. So I've been using it to get rid of some like kind of muscle soreness and some injuries. It's also quite popular.
do you test like which supplements are working or not? Like, we're taking 40. It seems like you're going to have some confounding, between them.
Raj, it's impossible to test as an NF1, right? All you could do is kind of subjectively test how you feel and if you have any effects, and really most of it is based on kind of faith of what other people have done and what studies exist out there. But yeah, so it is, and the biohacking community, especially like there is I think a lot of people also do this for fun. It's kind of like a hobby as well, right? Like, hey, you got this like great machine that is your body, and like why not like poke at it and see what might work and what wouldn't.
What's your current view on how long you think you'll live?
This is a complicated question. I think I'd be very surprised if all three of us don't live to about 120. 120 is known as the kind of maximum human lifespan today. I think the oldest person who ever lived to 122. There's something strange seemed to happen, by the way, around that time. Even kind of like super centurions kind of tend to their bodies tend to break down towards that kind of boundary. But there are many therapeutics coming to market that will help you expand your health span and live a healthier life. Up until that boundary, a lot of cancer treatments and stuff like that. And things that
Is it
would
your
use
break that?
cardiovascular
Is it your
disease.
brain that breaks down at 120? Because like your brain doesn't regenerate as well, right?
Yeah, you're so this is actually the scariest part about longevity. There are a lot of therapeutics coming out to help regenerate your body, but like this, like your neurons don't really regenerate, right? So even if everything else improves, you might be stuck with um like your cognition that's breaking apart. Hopefully we'll solve that. There are there are other experimental things that we can talk about, but yeah.
Immad, what's your I mean, how many supplements do you take? What's your like fitness routine?
I'm only on like 12 or 13 pills. Yeah, something interesting happened. I guess it was about a year ago. So I had these like regular migraines. I had them to various degrees since the age of 19. I was researching and then I started taking supplements. Like it was like finally they just went away. So up until that point, I was like always skeptical of supplements. I was like, the human body gets things from everywhere, and it kind of sounded like BS. But it's like a super correlated thing. Like if I stop taking them for a few weeks, like I get migraines again. So it's definitely my brain or my body was just missing some of this, and I haven't really bothered doing a full A/B test on exactly which one. On the internet, like it says, like maybe magnesium and a few other things. Or like, I actually think migraines are like everyone gets them for slightly different reasons. It's just like your brain's complaining, basically. So everyone has like slightly different cures for it. But it did turn out these supplements work like magic. So anyway, I'm very religious about taking them now. And I try to take ones that either are good for my heart or they just give me like a well-rounded thing. So Dylan
Which
has
supplements?
advised me of some of them, but most of them are obvious, like A to Z, B12 or B complex, turmeric, omega oils. What's that new one that I'm taking, Dylan? The one that's got the statin effect.
Dylan prescribed to you, but yeah.
Good yeast or something. I mean, Dylan's definitely involved in most of this curation of these. But I think, I
Do you
guess,
publish
like,
this stuff somewhere? Do you like actually like have like, hey, here's what I recommend?
oh, Dylan,
Like a Brian Johnson
Dylan, you should
thing?
do a blog about this.
I know I should. I really should. But the thing is, like, the most important advice for longevity is kind of the boring stuff, right? Like, you just like work out and eat clean and like take a few supplements. That's not fun to talk about. But on the other hand, have you guys heard of the term longevity escape velocity?
Is that like the singularity?
Yeah,
I understand
you
it,
could
but
call it a
like,
singularity for longevity. So the idea is that at certain point, right, science will start adding for each year you'd add more than 1 year to expected human lifespan, and there's then people have been predicting like when we will reach this point for a long time. Ray Kurzweil famously predicted very ambitiously that would be 2029. Aubrey de Grey has predicted it's like 2036. Like, so the point is that like there are some serious people who think this is coming around the corner very, very soon. And also this is very tightly linked to AGI because AGI is likely going to accelerate a lot of research around longevity.
well, I mean, I think we're seeing it. I think it's super exciting. We're seeing the advances in cancer treatment is really
this one.
exciting, and also heart disease. I mean, even things like Ozempic is going to dramatically increase longevity. I mean,
And
like,
diabetes, yeah.
yeah.
Well, Dylan, what kind of, I think when we first met, you weren't that into health and like fitness. What was the thing that kind of changed your whole perspective on this and made you like focus on this?
I was into health and fitness even then. Immad, probably not as much, but for me, this kind of goes back to childhood and some of my personal struggles. And I used to deal with depression and things like that, and had a bunch of baggage from childhood, and focusing on health and wellness and fitness has tremendously helped me. And it's just like, it's also like a part of this personal growth journey that I've been on, and I guess I'd say personal growth is like my biggest passion. And so health, wellness, and fitness is really one part of that.
Your childhood was Sri Lanka, right? I would love to hear a little bit about your journey to becoming a founder in the US. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I grew up in Sri Lanka, and it was not a fun time to grow up in Sri Lanka. There was a 30-year civil war going on, and my kind of education, all this stuff was impacted. My dad's career was impacted. Like he was a cop, and for a part of our childhood we were hiding because people were trying to like assassinate him, all these things. And then also like kind of other cultural baggage, a dysfunctional family, and all these things. And I kind of got really lucky, I think, when I finished high school. I had my dad had someone who advised him that I should apply to schools in the United States, and I very naively applied to the top 5 schools, and four of them rejected me because my English, like I didn't really speak English at the time, and because all of my education was in the local language, and MIT was the one school that was like, oh, he can do math pretty well. Who cares about English? And let's bring him in, and so I ended up graduating from MIT in 2006. Yeah, so that was
Why
probably
well could you do math? Like, how great was your math? It was like, can't speak English, but does math.
I had perfect scores for every like other non everything except English. Every other test I ever took had perfect scores.
Yeah. MIT is great that way, right? Like when you go to MIT, you see all these people from like random countries and like from really interesting backgrounds, because MIT is truly meritocratic, right? It's truly meritocratic, right? Not like this fake meritocratic of the other IBs or whatever, right? I think that's the amazing thing about MIT. You meet so many cool people.
Yeah, definitely very grateful, and also like kind of coming from a relatively socialist, communist type environment, and I was always a passionate person. So when I was a kid, I was like a passionate socialist, and
Are you a passionate socialist?
oh yeah, totally. Views.
What was the most extreme socialist view you had?
How things have changed. Yeah.
No, I was kind of involved in what I was starting with the more socialist kind of political parties in Sri Lanka as well. But I was like 16, right? I was just like absorbing what was taught to me, and this is a huge part thing about language and culture that people don't understand. Culture and language can be weaponized, right? Like culture and language can be used to isolate people and control like what information that they consume. And this was like a huge, like a really jarring learning for me after I left Sri Lanka and started reading all these books that are not in English, and reading history. I was like, what? Like everything is different. It might be the same content, but the framing can be different, right? So yeah, so it was quite shocking to learn that the world worked.
I wonder if the internet has like solved that, or maybe in some ways it's got its own bubble, so it makes it worse in its own way. I mean, ideally it solves it because everything's available, right?
I personally think it solves it more than hurts it. Yeah, when I visit Sri Lanka now, people are definitely much more aware of what's going on in the rest of the world thanks to the internet.
So you had this like kind of immigrant story. You moved to the US. You kind of made it, got into MIT. Why not just kind of stick at it with Google or something like that? Why start a startup like that? It seems like there was a easier path.
Yeah, it's just because I'm a statist, like all three of us. Yeah, so there are multiple ways of answering that question, but I think for me, I've always been very existentially motivated. Like, what why am I here and what's the point of my life kind of thing is something that I'm kind of think about and bothered by like almost every single day. And that also gives me a lot of energy to really kind of push myself to, the way Steve Jobs put it, like put your own dent in the universe or put a dent in the universe. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I have a question slightly related but unrelated. I have kids, obviously. Raj does as well. One thing I struggle with is like advising them about the future. I'm like, oh, you should do coding, but then I'm like, is like coding going to be that useful in 10 years from now? I think it's kind of useful because it like helps you think better. So it's useful as a training regardless. But yeah, do you think good skills that kids will need from like 10, 20 years from now?
It's a good question.
Oh man, you're asking the guy who does not have kids.
That's a great question. The only job I feel like would be safe is like being a founder. Like I don't know, but like everyone's gonna be a founder or creator. I don't have that.
Or maybe there'll be so much abundance you won't need a job, right? Like that's
Okay, well, maybe the
that's not-
rephrasement is like, where does one find meaning in life then? Because like at least I find a lot of meaning in life through like the work that I pursue. I think it's hard to like just try to relax during the day. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
everyone needs a purpose for sure.
Yeah, I this is a whole another big topic. We can talk about for hours. I think humanity is going to run into a vacuum of meaning, and we'll just like need to figure it out.
I worry a little bit that like when we got rid of religion, we already created like a vacuum of meaning, which like I think as like to go back to the longevity conversation, like I think like in Silicon Valley, like longevity is a religion, and like you even talked about it with like it's fun to biohack and you believe in these things, but like it's hard to like really know. So I worry a little bit that we'll also remove work, and that we've removed religion and work, and like everyone's gonna have like no meaning, and we never replace these things with something else that's like quite as good in terms of like giving people meaning.
I think there's a couple things that give people meaning, right? One is building things or creating things, or just like taking care of things. So like even gardening gives people meaning. You see, people who are a little bit older, right? Like
Oh,
they
having
love
kids
gardening.
gives people meaning.
Yeah, having kids.
But we're getting rid of that too.
Well, yeah, but just tending to something, even maintaining a car, can give people meaning. And then taking care of other people, or just like servicing other people, or helping other people with their problems, like volunteering at a hospital or something like that, give people meaning. So I think people will find meaning in general. Like I don't think everyone's just going to be like, sitting around and like watching TV all day. I think people will find there will be problems. There'll just be different types of problems.
I will say though, I feel like literally right now in this moment in history, if you care about meaning, is one of the most awesome times to be alive because you're maximally empowered to seek meaning, right? Like you're not resource constrained. If you want to be an artist, if you want to create, if you want to make movies, like go to Sora and maybe you can start making movies, right? You don't even need a whole production crew.
Exactly, yeah.
If you want to start a company, you can just so much easier to do. So yeah, like right now in this point of history, it's like the peak meaning making point, and people should be taking advantage of that.
Music is a perfect example. There's like some crazy stat about like 10,000 pieces of music being released on Spotify a day. I don't know exactly what the stat is. We should look it up, but like it's a crazy amount of music that's coming out on a daily basis. Whereas probably before in a year, 30 years ago, you'd get that type of that amount of music. So people just like creating music just for fun, right? Like people just love creating it. It does mean that the value of music is gone down per piece, right? Obviously, but people just like doing it, and people will like creating movies. There's gonna be so many movies, so many books, so many, all of these things. Yeah.
Also, like it's right now, you can work on this, like these insurmountable problems have become much more approachable, right? Like going to Mars is like within our reach, and literally solving longevity is within our reach. Like Sam Altman and I think Brian Armstrong has started these companies. Something called partial reprogramming that could lead to like literally solving longevity. So which is amazing, and this
But what
is
does
true
partial
across the
reprogramming do?
board. So this is one of the possibly the biggest breakthrough in longevity and most exciting one. There's a scientist called Yamanaka who figured out that introducing four proteins to any cell can turn that cell into a stem cell, essentially wipe out the entire history of aging in that cell and turn that into an embryonic stem cell, which is a huge breakthrough because you could have you could have lived in a universe where there's information lost over time and the cell cannot be reset, right? But you can't. And then partial reprogramming. The problem with doing that is that if you have a blob of stem cells, that might turn into tumors, right? So you don't want to turn into a blob. Partial reprogramming is the idea that you introduce these factors, Yamanaka factors, these proteins, in moderate amounts, and you just like partially reset the cell. So you avoid the cancer-inducing stage, but you preserve characteristics of the cell. It still remains the nerve cell or whatever muscle fiber cell, but you get rid of all the aging stuff. So they've done this in mice, and we've seen like 30% increase of lifespan in 2016. I think there was a study. And if you can solve two things, basically, like figure out how much of these factors need to be introduced to each cell, and then figure out the delivery mechanism, right? So use a virus or mRNA, whatever. If you can solve those two problems, you can basically stop aging practically, and keep the body kind of regenerating and for a long time. So it's extremely exciting.
Dylan, if you weren't working on System 2 and you were going to work on like a longevity startup, like, I mean, A, do you have a good idea for a longevity startup? And B, how, like, if there's a founder out there that's like looking to learn or be in this space, like, where do you think they should go to like try to find good ideas or find good people?
Oh, great questions. So for the first question, I would say there are two types of longevity startups you can start. So the type that I just talked about, partial cell reprogramming, you might want to start one, or you can just build or join one of these startups that are well funded. And the challenge though is that it's still science, right? Like so, your expected kind of success is expected value might be low. So you got to be you got to be lucky, and there's like many different ways to explore this problem. And then the other type of longevity startup you can start is much more like kind of direct to consumer, which really System 2 is a longevity startup in that sense, where help people live a long time by using existing tools and introduce some of these experimental tools to the consumer. And consumer interest in longevity has been exploding, and so there are definitely a number of companies popping up doing that. So it's a very exciting time. And to answer the second question, yeah, there has been like a number of, like, I'm potentially going to this event called or it's kind of like a village that they're doing in Honduras called Vitalia in January. It's like a 3-month program. I'm only going there for a week, and it's focused on longevity. And
Was this the one that had that big fight with the Honduras government?
maybe they did. I don't know if they did. But that's one option. There are a number of other things going on.
Like, where do people hang out online? Like on Reddit, or like where do people talk?
I mean, yeah, longevity, Reddit is a big place, and Twitter is big, right? And yeah, so
I'm sure there's some group chats for it too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Dylan, I had another question for you. Kind of taking this in a different direction, but I'm curious. I mean, I know you're a big believer in this, space exploration, and you're getting to Mars ASAP. Would love to hear your thoughts on this whole thing. I hear Elon Musk is a big listener of our podcast, so I'm sure he'll be listening to whatever you have to say as well. We'll tag him on Twitter just in case he misses it.
Yeah, the TLDR on space exploration is that what's happening with Starship is essentially reducing the cost to orbit by 1,000 times, right? It used to cost like $100,000, and then maybe in best cases like $10,000 per kilogram. And in theory, the Starship rocket can bring it down to $10 per kilogram, which is like a huge Typically when something improves 10x, that's a big deal. This is like 1,000x improvement. And what that means is that you can start thinking about doing things that you never thought possible. Building all kinds of structures in space, and asteroid mining, and even going to the moon and Mars and stuff like that. So there's endless debate about how useful this stuff is, because Earth actually is very rich in everything that we need, and living on Mars doesn't sound as awesome. But the whole point is that humans are all about exploring, right? Humans are all about like what's the next frontier, and it's inspiring. And like Elon says, just like gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning and be excited about life. So from that point of view, it's super exciting. And there are like many different, like if you want to start a space startup, it's never been a better time. A lot of people are
It
thinking
does
about,
feel like once we're kind of solving longevity, space is like the next frontier, right? Like longevity, I think would be the priority, but I would think like space would be right after that.
One thing that's interesting is how like a lot of these trends kind of converge. Like AI abundance might be necessary to have like enough resources to go to space. And then if you can like freeze people or live for like a long time, maybe you can go to a different like solar system. Like all of these things kind of like, converge. There was this interesting, I guess crypto kind of converges to this as well, like AI bots kind of like paying each other and like living in like a digital economy and that kind of thing. So I always find that kind of interesting. I've actually invested in a startup that they only raised like 10 million and managed to get like a working satellite into space. This is maybe that's like more easy to think about, but this was a few years ago, and it was like literally unheard of. Like every space startup before that to get like a working thing in space would take like $100 million. So it really has changed the game.
How do they do it? Like,
I mean, nowadays you just take like basically off the shelf like computers, and you pay for like they're called microsats, and there's all these platforms for microsats, so you don't have to build it from scratch. And then you pay for a block on like a SpaceX thing, and those things are launching like I think several times a week now or something. So it's just like it used to be that like you would have to plan years in advance to get like a slot on like a rocket that might blow up, and you had to send like these military grade equipment that was like radiation proof and all of this. Now it's just like so easy. You send it and you're like, okay, maybe it'll get fried in like a few years because of like radiation, but then you just send another one and you just kind of deorbit them. So it's just like a completely different game to what it used to be, even like, I mean, basically like 7 years ago.
it's exactly right? Like, so Hubble telescope was like this massive project. We spent like tens of billions of dollars probably, and it was awesome, right? But it cost a lot. And then James Webb, that we're getting incredible data about the beginning of the universe and stuff like that. It still costs, if I'm recalling right, 4 billion, maybe more. Almost certainly may have been more. Whereas with Starship, in theory, we could put up like, I don't know, like 100 cheap telescopes up there that does various things, and it would cost way less. So yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Immad, you do a lot of space investing, don't you? Like, how many space companies have you invested in?
I think I'm on like 7 or so. I haven't invested in anything super interesting. I feel like this kind of AI wave in the last year or so has not, I just feel like there's not that many space startups, or maybe I'm just missing them. There was this cool one that I didn't get to invest in, but I think it's like a crazy idea. It's like they're putting like these mirrors in space to like kind of telescopically give energy to like solar panels that are like in the truck. I think that's just like a crazy idea, but that's a more recent one that I've seen. But yeah, the easiest things in space are either telecommunications like Starlink, and there's a bunch of companies there. I don't think I've been invested in anything. Or imaging. Imaging is the other one where there's been a ton of investment, and it's like quite a big market.
Imaging means taking pictures of the Earth and stuff?
Yeah, I mean the most basic one is you go to Google Maps and it's got satellite imagery, but there's tons of stuff around kind of multispectral, so you can like, if you want to look at crops and see like what are the infrared radiation, are they getting enough water, you can do like a ton of things from space. There's obviously a ton of military applications to that as well.
Yeah.
If you can get thousands of satellites up there to take images, like then you can do almost real time imagery of like anywhere on Earth, and it's a completely different kind of model to what used to exist in space imaging.
Yeah, there's a lot of other crazy ideas. I mean, space manufacturing is one that I'm very excited for. Again, from a longevity point of view, and other stuff as well, right? It's so much easier to like 3D print, say like human organs and stuff like that, in zero gravity, and there are companies working on that. And then there are other crazier ideas there are multiple ideas of like solving climate change with space tech, putting a like a Fresnel lens at the Lagrangian point and kind of like diverting some of the sunlight off and like making the Earth a bit cooler. So obviously there are other solutions to climate change, but like it's like there's so many different things.
What is a Fresnel lens?
It's just like a giant lens that will divert some of the sunlight.
I feel like some of these things are not that expensive, right? Like putting something in space to block a bit of sunlight probably would be way cheaper than all the things we do on Earth for climate change.
That could be scary for like a supervillain or something, right? Like, I'm going to block out the sun if you don't pay any money or something.
Yeah, I guess you could like take sun away from a particular country. I don't think they're like that precise though.
Yeah, and space becomes even more. So I think there are two big steps to make space approachable. The first one is cost to orbit, and that's more like a rocket engine problem. And the Raptor engine that SpaceX has built, it's an absolute marvel of engineering, incredible. The second step is actually like robots, right? Like if you can have humanoids, like a general purpose robot, go up there and do stuff. The biggest problem in space is the risk. And even if you have a very safe spacecraft, humans still can't spend a lot of time in space because there's cosmic kind of radiation. Even if you have really good shielding, then like living in zero gravity has negative effects on your biology. I mean, we've done like twin studies with people who lived in or spent time on the International Space Station. But robots is going to make a huge difference. So so that's like I think we're on the cusp of having humanoids. So those two things will really transform space. And to your point, Immad, these things converge. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, there's this idea of like all the dividend we got from like iPhones, like in terms of like battery technology and like touchscreen technology and all this stuff. Maybe there's like those dishwasher humanoid robots are gonna have like a space dividend. That would be like an interesting convergence.
What else are you excited about, Dylan? I know you're a bit of a futurist as well, so I'm curious, what else, like, when you think about the next 10, 20 years in terms of technologies?
I am also extremely excited about what's happening in brain-computer interfaces. I think, I mean, even from a longevity point of view, like we talked about, like your brain is the one thing that we don't quite know how to rejuvenate. And what's happening with Neuralink, etc. It's really exciting. I think in one of our earlier conversations, I was predicting that by the end of 2025, we will have the first superhumans in the sense that across one objectively measurable test, we will have humans with an implant that does better than almost every human without an implant, right? So, and in some kind of useful metric, and that's something like that would be exciting. And but then in the kind of like very very long run, how this like the most sci-fi version of kind of things like Neuralink and BCI is that the what makes you human really is the neocortex, like the outermost layer of the brain, and and turns out like we know that if you just remove some of the neocortex, you don't stop being human, right? So it's not like there's a hard boundary to it. So from that, you can extrapolate that. Well, what if you keep adding to the neocortex, right? Can you kind of like expand and grow your brain type thing? And the ultimate version of this is that like what if you can like slowly migrate to a neocortex that is external to your brain by through adding kind of like more and more layers of whether it's biological or artificial neurons to the brain, and migrate your consciousness to a different substrate kind of thing. So that would be like the kind of ultimate version of ultimate ending of BCI. So that's very exciting, and yeah, making a lot of progress there.
Crazy. That's what substrate would you migrate your brain to?
Unclear, but yeah, it would be very very exciting to find out.
It's like you can store your brain in like some external jar or something.
Things get very very philosophical at this point, right? Like so.
I mean, there's people working on that too. But I do think, I mean, this idea sounds far fetched, but like, like this, I've been using a mouse and a keyboard for like 30 years. I feel like they're like attached to my body. Like it doesn't feel like that different from using my arm to like using this mouse. Like I think this idea of like augmenting a little bit at a time is not that far. Like we're already all basically like cyborgs. They're just like not quite attached to our face yet.
I mean, one of my thoughts has always been like voice AI would be so prevalent that it basically feels like computers are attached to your brain. Like you can just say something and things will happen. And I think just microphones will be everywhere, and also cameras will be everywhere. So like even in your home at any point, you can just wave your arm and something will happen, or you can say something and there'll be a microphone to pick it up. And people,
I mean, the
will
way
just get comfortable with it.
the way humans use light is like kind of magic, right? Like it's like previously our eyes were limited to like if it's dark you can't see, but now it's like there's no place that's dark to us. So I think like these things become like normal over time. But yeah, augmented brains is definitely happening. A small complaint. I feel like Apple's dominance in some of this stuff actually like slows things down. Like I just can't believe that like AirPods do not have like a built-in like LLM right now. Like it's just crazy that like I wear this thing and I can't just like speak to it. And like I feel like if there was like more competition and there was a more open ecosystem, we would have like some of these things, pushed a little bit more aggressively.
I think that's where startups come in. Startups can push Apple by moving quickly. There's plenty of like, Bluetooth microphones out there or Bluetooth headphones out there. But I think startups can push Apple, and Apple, will eventually buy them or compete with them. I don't think you can blame Apple. I think that's just how big companies work. So it's, I think,
I mean, it's also like kind of a good thing from a startup perspective. Like if all these big companies were doing everything right, we wouldn't have a chance to make new ones.
The big companies are big companies. They do what they do.
I think the bit that I'm blaming them for, which, if there was government intervention in some of this stuff, I wish government would like force openness on these platforms. It's like, I don't really care about breaking up Google, like who cares, but like forcing the App Store to be open or forcing like, whatever. Like there's a bunch of things that AirPods can do that no other Bluetooth headphones can do. Like these things should be open standards. And like that would be something I'd be more excited about government pushing.
So you're pro-government regulation. Noted.
Only when it comes to open standards. Like, when there's clearly a dominant platform, like just not even dictating what the standard is like actually saying like, hey, whatever APIs you give to your AirPods, like give them to others.
Should be fair.
Bluetooth seems like an
The other thing I'd say I'm very excited about the future is some fundamental breakthroughs in physics. And we haven't really had one of those in a while. We've had like the what Einstein came up with and then standard model in quantum physics for a long time, but we haven't like had a really kind of like a new understanding of the universe in a long time. And I'm very excited that AI and other tech will help us figure this out, like the next layer of it. And I'm hopeful, it's definitely wishful thinking that this will unlock the solution to the Fermi paradox, like where the aliens are. That'd be very cool.
So you think there's like some physics-based answer to like why the aliens are either not there or we can't see them or something?
So I'm kind of obsessed with Fermi paradox, but my favorite theory is that there is some way to communicate non-locally across the universe, and the implication of this is that you can think of every civilization kind of building their own router to connect to a universal internet, which we are not connected to yet. And once you connect to it, you'll just like You just like know where everyone else is, and this is why you don't see a bunch of aliens flying around, because there's no good reason to travel interstellar distances. While when you have that kind of communication, you can use VR to go places and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd be very happy if we figure this out in my lifetime.
Yeah, that would be cool. Oh, your lifetime might be forever, so.
Exactly. So
Immad, speaking of this, you read a bunch of science fiction, right? Like this is like a big thing for you as well. Have you ever published your list of like favorite books or something?
I used to do like yearly, like these are my favorite books from this year. I don't have like an overall list. I feel like I haven't read any really good sci-fi this year. I'm trying to think if I feel like I went through a very long phase of reading all the good sci-fi I could find, and I feel like I've run out. But if someone has any recommendations, I would love to hear the most recent good. I like hard sci-fi, so things that actually like are potentially doable, but like are not like pure fantasy.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, nowadays with people in the age of abundance, people have more time to write sci-fi novels, so that would be great. Hopefully we'll get a good one out for you.
Yeah.
I just got a recommendation for a book called Earth Runner. I haven't read it, but it's supposed to be
Cool. I think we should wrap. This was really fun, Dylan. Thanks for joining. We should have you back in the future.
This is a trippy podcast. Any psychedelic you would recommend, Dylan, for people to listen to, for you all to listen to this podcast?
all of them.
It's equal rights on psychedelics.
Oh yeah, I'm totally cool. Thanks. This was super fun. Thanks to everyone for listening. And you could follow us on all the regular channels: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. And thanks, Dylan. This should be our last podcast for the year, I believe. We'll see you again in 2025. It's been a great year for the podcast. We've had so many great guests and had some really interesting conversations. More to come in 2025.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you, guys.